Do you have free will? How about when you get triggered and you're swept away by anger? Or when hate narrows the broad lens for which you can see another until all that is left is a hyper-focused, all but blind, seething bias? Or when fear consumes you and the walls of doubt, powerlessness, and despair close in all around you? Why is it important to understand the ego? Because it helps you to understand the true you from the illusory you, and because it helps you to see where your free will stops or begins. At the core of all negatively oriented experiences is fear. People might say, "I'm not afraid, I'm angry." But what does that anger arise from? The fear of not being respected? The fear of not being in control? The fear of loss? Or one might say, "I'm not afraid of her, I just hate her." But what does that hate arise from? A lack of understanding her? A lack of integrating her perspective? A lack of control over her? Or does she remind you of someone else? Which again brings the previous questions back into focus. If you imagine a diagram, and the bottom of the graph starts with the word fear, when fear is triggered, suddenly branches stem from that point. If it's fear of loss, then some of the branches of choice that become available are jealousy or the fear of the unknown. Each branch you choose unlocks its own sub-branches to be experienced. Jealousy opens the sub-branches of shame, loneliness, lack of control, resentment, and hate. The fear of the unknown opens the sub-branches of lack of control, existential fear, crisis, and identity death. Every branch and sub-branch lead to fear, anger, rage, or even hate. And fear ultimately leads to very few actions: fight, flight, or other forms of avoidance and distraction; freeze or fawn; flattery or affection out of survival. If you've been on the road of self-awareness long enough, you eventually come to see that the problem with fear is that it's a closed system. And when you open the program of fear, you can only play within the boundaries of fear. And fear can only summon and accumulate more fear. Yikes, and we're only just getting started. Have you ever considered how free will can operate in the same space as the ego? Everyone is gifted with an ego. It's a primary aspect for generating experiences in this density of consciousness. Density means the amount of energy and information that can be received, stored on a medium, transduced, and expressed. And that medium is you. The ego is many things, but it's not the true you. Ego is an entity, or more easily understood as a character, a role you play in order to create and distill experiences and evolve your individual consciousness along with the collective consciousness. The ego adopts political ideologies, religious convictions, professional titles, social roles, etc., and then produces experience from such activities and dynamics. This isn't a bad thing. Everything has its usefulness and qualities. It's all experience and a big part of why we are here. The ego also uploads psycho-emotional programs such as victimhood, entitlement, worthlessness, etc., in order to generate and extract experiences. The power and teaching qualities of ego is an exact measure to how intensely one identifies with each label, persona, and program. That's right, ego is just a program that you install and play until you're ready to heal and integrate the data. The ego also goes around collecting stuff, and more stuff, identifying itself with said stuff. It seems pretty harmless when you see the joy on a child's face when she just received an awesome or pretty new toy. But when it's time to take that toy away, or when another child wants to play with it, the child throws a complete tantrum. What most don't realize is that the child's young ego has identified with said toy. Thus, when you take that toy away, it's as if ripping away an aspect of them. The child's first experiences with ego death. The child may then unconsciously develop an aspect of mind that associates stuff with self. Therefore, the egoic mind's conclusion is, the more stuff, the more self, and the more self, the more worth, or the more stuff, the more security. Ego may then carry this notion with them for the rest of their life. What's ego's role in the family or other social structures? Is it the good girl? Don't rock the boat. Prioritize others' needs over your own, and conform to social expectations. Be sure to turn over your power so that you are liked, because being liked is a great survival strategy or provides a sense of worth, says ego. Or is your ego the kind that learned early on in life to project its stories and discomforts onto others, thus immediately defaulting to blame and disassociation, separating oneself as far away from the event and from the emotions and body as possible? I hate how this feels in my body, you take it. Or has your clever ego figured out the power of being a victim? At some point, something painful happens and you come to a fork in the road, the path of learning and well-being, or the path of victimhood. If victimhood is chosen, then one shifts their polarity from radiance to magnetism, a gravity well drawing all energy to them to support their own wants and agendas. Horrible things will happen to all of us, but where does the suffering end and the lessons and empowerment finally begin? All of these things are brilliant performances. Any one of us have the ability to be great movie stars. But where's the true freedom in this system? Better yet, where's the true you? Is your sense of self derived from a collection of stories brought about by a theatrical character that you adopted on your journey and unwittingly play? Or is it derived from something deeper, more authentic, more harmonious, and enduring? Ultimately, fear and ego are neither bad nor good. They're just experiences and very useful tools for evolution. To simplify the understanding of ego, the primary aspects of ego are three. 1. The urge to control. 2. Attachment, identity, and external fulfillment rather than from within. P.S. Love doesn't require attachment. And 3. The fear of the unknown, which leads to a fear of death, rejection, and lack, which are all ultimately the same. And these three things perpetually play off of each other, intertwine, and are one and the same. After coming to this enlightening, but often devastating realization, then one can find he/she is left without solid ground to stand on. It can be very painful and surreal when one's ego realizes its own irrelevance in the grand scheme of things. Ego has no foundation in reality. It's just the power of imagination. And the power of imagination is a powerful thing. But where does this imagination get its power from? Would you rather build upon your true self more than your illusory, idealized, and idolized self? Would you rather build upon your lasting self rather than your transient self? Would you rather break free from the bonds and playground of fear and come into relationship with the world of true free will? You have to break free from survival mode in order to rise to higher and higher consciousness and states of being. You don't necessarily have to give up the roles that you play. We have them for profound reasons, but it would do you well to become aware of their limitations and sufferings, or the beauty and depth and potentials of each role, and distill the best qualities / energies from them. So what's next? Some might be feeling more lost and meaninglessness after stopping at no threshold of fear and illusion and pushing forward on the spiritual path. But don't worry, it gets better. Try to remember that it's all just an old, antiquated system breaking down, making way for the new paradigm of experience. And in this arena, one must leap into the unknown, throwing out your arms and legs to free fall. Then, turn your volition of will and make a declaration. Not merely with one's words, but with the totality of your being. That I will let go of the old conditioning, fear, and confusion, and I will trust that the universe has my back. After making such a liberating, self-empowering statement, then what one eventually stumbles upon is the catalyst. Once a being makes the shift in perception from one of effect, that of being thrown to and fro by life's many inconveniences, to that of the catalyst, then one has found where their personal power awaits them. Catalyst is stimulation that can be produced by the mind-body-spirit complex, which provides opportunities for evolution. Catalyst is initially an unbiased, ambiguous, or neutral instigator that, when utilized, offers learning, quickens evolution, develops the will and faith, generates experiences, and polarizes the being. Ultimately, everything is conspiring to the evolution of consciousness. There's a vast amount of science dedicated to the evolution of biology. We know a great deal about the change in inheritable characteristics of physicality over successive generations. But what no one talks about is the evolution of consciousness, which is at the very core of all biology, and that which inspires the movement of evolution itself. One of the primary purposes of incarnation is to evolve. And if you have the eyes to see, you'll see that everything is here to help you to do just that. Essentially, all that stimulates the senses and everything that presents itself before a being is catalyst. Seasons, sun, rain, snow, wind, hunger, thirst, parenthood, sisterhood, friendship, anger, hate, loss, pain, laughter, joy, love. Are you not a recording device? Hearing, seeing, tasting, touching? And are you not a transmission device? Speaking, raging, hating, giving, laughing, dancing, loving? Everything is here to move consciousness. It's all designed to stimulate and draw out experience via rhythms, cycles, and choices, so that beings can distill information, deepening and expanding their beingness. And it's the catalyst, when used most efficiently, that has the potential to unlock the doors to free will and the true self. The goal is to break free of the egoic and karmic loop. In order to do that, we must go to our toolkit where we find open-mindedness, optimism, or you could say faith, flexibility, forgiveness of the self too, compassion, childlike wonder, and the open heart. Ego consciousness is committed to misunderstanding, because to see more clearly is to become honest, and to become honest, the ego dies. That said, you'll die a million times before embodying higher consciousness, embodying the true self. Once you can perceive these things I'm talking about, then you come to see that there's a rite of passage, and that's by turning and facing the catalyst head on. Otherwise, souls will get stuck in the sinkhole of indifference until they finally polarize their consciousness towards the processing of catalyst and the quickening of evolution. When someone or something triggers you, learn to observe the movements of mind to defend, avoid, control, fawn, or freeze. And instead of being swept away by the same responses again and again, begin to create space by pausing and pioneering a new way. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Albert Einstein. You can create space by immediately telling yourself to breathe, or to yourself say focus or catalyst. If you can focus your breath, it injects your presence into the situation and can rip you right out of the hypnosis of fear or anger. Once this is accomplished, observe that there is no real threat. There's just identity and the fear of the unknown, in which maybe anger arises from insecurity and thus the need to control. It's from the heart-based consciousness that attachments, control, and the fear of the unknown or death can be healed, and the situation can be reconciled. Heart-based consciousness always includes the other in the equation. It sees that everything is a reflection of self, pointing to where healing is needed, and so that you actually take control of the steering wheel again. When the ego finally looks to the heart for help, the options are unlimited, but the options will always gravitate towards harmony, support for all involved, and oneness. If you do this work, you will not only create more healthy connections with others and harmonize your place in the universe, but you will also begin to build a trusting relationship with yourself. Because you will start to trust that you will adapt to life's unfoldings with compassion, softness, and grace, versus feeling uneasy every time surprises occur because you risk losing yourself again and again to chaos, fear, anger, and confusion. I worked many years as a dog groomer, and I recently received a great lesson when I forgot to practice the catalyst work. It was a busy and hectic day at work when a man with a thick Spanish accent came in with 2 dogs to have me clip and file their nails. I could see and sense that the man was stressed. I normally take charge and help direct the clients and dogs, since I've done this line of work for a lot of years and know what needs to be done. But this man wanted to control everything, and I could see that he had a plan. It threw me off my game, and I became very impatient and firm with him. Our wheels clashed, and I got angered. The anger went unchecked, and the situation got processed without the heart. I took the dog back to do its nails, and I'm embarrassed to admit, but I started judging him, thinking, what a jerk. I wonder if he's like this with his wife and kids at home. And I even thought, I wouldn't be surprised if he's abusive to these poor dogs. When I went to return his dogs, he was awaiting me with a warm smile on his face, soft energy, and a $25 tip for just 5 minutes worth of work. It was then that I noticed that he only had 1 arm. He then tells me that he had to do it this way, or his 2 large dogs were too much for him to handle with 1 arm, and that he didn't know how to explain it to me with his broken Spanish. After being humbled, I stepped out back with watery eyes to get some fresh air. Looking at the situation from a new and fuller perspective, I could clearly see the distortions, confusion, and problems that can arise when events are processed without the heart. The reason someone triggers you is because you haven't integrated their perspective. Aaron Apke. Here's some strategies to help you get started with this work. Ask questions like, do you feel I was being unfair? Do you feel disrespected? Do you feel heard? What's your perspective or experience? How can I better support you? And then remain quiet and really find their wishes and needs within their response. Be aware of any urge to control and manipulate that arises in you and breathe again. Focusing on the breath, remember that the other is the self, thus your reflection. What is it they are pointing to within you that needs understanding, a soft touch, and healing? The focus is always to balance catalyst with love. If you're struggling with those questions and struggling with the concept of the true self and processing catalyst via the heart, then here's some other questions you can ponder and meditate on that will greatly help you in beginning to understand that aspect of you that is the ego. Who is it that feels fear? Who is it that feels angry? Who is it that wants to control? What aspect of me found separation? And remember that ultimately the discomfort, conflict, and confusion come from the ego and from the perceived illusion of separation, self and other self. Then recognize all the ways in which you are one and the same, having compassion and understanding for them and you. Then connect at the point where all beings can equally meet as one, the heart. Catalyst is something that you can't avoid. This reality is designed so that the avoidance of catalyst is ultimately impossible. The universe will keep putting situations in front of you until you finally face them, learn, heal, and integrate them into your being. Catalysts that don't get processed by the conscious mind will get relegated to the subconscious mind. An accumulation of too many unprocessed catalysts will play out in the dreamscape to help you move the energies and information. If you're overwhelmed by catalyst and in states of intense emotions or even despair, then your dreams will reflect the same. It's best to process each catalyst as they present themselves and before they reach the subconscious or become a part of the deep-rooted mind. Then it becomes a bit harder to heal them and requires more time spent with each catalyst. There's also a balancing technique of the teachers known as raw that you can do. Every experience, good or unpleasant, has its opposite. And it's because they are opposite that they are paradoxically the same, just at opposite ends of the spectrum and varying only in degree. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. The Kybalion. Because each experience, each state of mind has an opposite state of experience which runs along a sliding scale, then all can be alchemized. By using cognitive alchemy, you heal your perspectives and integrate catalyst. Therefore, the balancing technique of Ra teaches that you can enter the meditative or contemplative states and balance intense experiences of anger, fear, resentment, worthlessness, etc. by visualizing its dynamic opposite. If impatient, visualize patience. If feeling insecure, visualize empowerment and confidence. If feeling lonely and separated, visualize all the ways in which you are in relationship with the universe and one. The key to all visualization techniques is acceptance. When doing these balancing techniques, it informs the subconscious mind that you are actively working through your catalyst, and the subconscious mind will then aid you and may even reveal some of its mysteries. All is conspiring to help you. Something to note is that there are two basic uses of catalyst: negatively polarizing the catalyst or positively polarizing the catalyst. Control is the basic key to negatively polarizing, and acceptance is the basic key to positively polarizing. There are those who have chosen to polarize on the negative path, but I'll save that discussion for another time. If you start to view interactions with others and all situations as catalysts for spiritually maturing and for creating harmony and loving connections, then the mind and heart start working together, bringing about more heart-mind coherence. This state of being ripples out to affect every other area of life, and you'll see it reflected back to you, since all is a mirror. and all are just other selves. As you practice this work, you will swing back and forth between separation, fear, anger, control, etc., to flexibility, understanding, compassion, love, and oneness. It's a balancing act that takes time. You've been conditioned to believe you're separated from others and hypnotized by your fears for a very, very long time, so be patient with yourself. After doing this catalyst work and healing your perspectives, you start to get excited for the next catalyst and the next opportunity to see yourself reflected in another self. You don't view life's events as problems anymore. Instead, you see them as a great invitation and opportunity to do work in consciousness and to heal. When the shift takes place, then the most self-empowering thing happens. You see that everything is here to help you. Then the whole game changes, and you're no longer being played by your ego, you're now calling the shots. The problem in our society is that no one has a holistic perspective and approach to viewing and dealing with reality. Whether it's the medical field, the world's religions, the political arena, or relationships, we tend to separate things, put everything in a container and say, this is this and that is that. This is right and that is wrong. This is good and that is bad. When in reality, it's all one creation. Therefore, it's all necessary. All spirituality, all science, all interactions, all dark corridors of the mind, love in all of its beauty and glory, or all its horror. It's all one thing. So the next stage of consciousness is to remove the containers and begin to recognize every iota of the creation all as one universal body and mind. Similarly to how the brain, heart, liver, arms, legs, emotions, mind, and spirit are all the same, the 360-degree being. If you made it to the end of this, congratulations. These messages may have evoked new experiences in you, some good and some may be unpleasant. If it's being experienced as unpleasant, just remember that it's just old thought systems breaking down, and allow yourself to start to explore consciousness. When you really think about it, isn't it bizarre that we have become so afraid of thoughts in the first place? Humanity is currently going through a major shift and entering the next stage, paradigms, and ages of consciousness, and everyone is having to face major catalysts in these times. We have a rough road ahead of us, but try to disconnect from consensus reality, from all the distractions, and connect with your essence as often as possible. And don't forget to process the fears and confusion of others, of the self, and of the planetary mind through the lens of compassion and love. Remember, you are not a persona. You are not the storytelling aspect of mind. Whatever goes when you tell the truth you never really had in the first place. Attune to that which is truly you. You are the wave that suddenly recognizes that you are the ocean. You are an infinite and eternal being who agreed to come to the world of separation and duality. Have a veil placed between your conscious mind and subconscious mind so that you wouldn't remember who you are and what you came here to do, for the main purpose of making choices out of free will, unveiling and touching love and oneness again and again, and spiritually maturing. It may help you to start seeing the creation as a giant school, complete with infinite courses and lessons that are all dedicated to your growth. And as you move and have your being, you organize and color your soul uniquely to you and your individual walk through eternity together with other selves and with the Creator.